Hello again, and welcome back to the sixth episode of AtlantaCast. Today we are discussing the sixth episode of the FX TV series Atlanta. This one is called, Dad?
Value.
Yeah. But, of course, before we get started, I'd like to remind you all once again, we have a Patreon. That's patreon.com/AtlantaCast, where for just $5 a month you can receive a shout-out, a personal thank you, that is, on behalf of us. $10 a month will get you access to 2 weeks ahead of the current upload schedule on YouTube, so you'll be able to see episode 7. No, we're on 6, so 8. You'd be able to see episode 8 right now if you pledged when you're seeing this. And, of course, the $15 tier, that'll get you access to bonus episodes of AtlantaCast. We've already done one on This Is America, the music video, so go check that one out. A very interesting discussion is had. And, yeah. As always, we greatly appreciate any support you guys have to give. So with that said, let's launch on into this first episode, or sixth episode.
Yeah. Yeah, so value is the title of this, and this episode is a pretty close look at the character of Van, or Vanessa. This is the mother of Ern's child, Lottie. And most of the scenes involve Van. There's really no subplot or secondary story going on in this one, and it starts off with a restaurant date where Van is she enters a restaurant to meet a very well dressed woman who apparently is one of her friends from elementary school. Excuse me.
Yeah, I didn't see how far back they had known each other, but I mean, definitely a long time, it seems.
Yeah, they make a reference at one point in the conversation to something that happened. I think they said elementary school, but anyway, it's somebody that she's known for a long time.
Yeah,
and
her friend's name is Jade.
Yes, Jade is very well dressed and made up, and clearly has the appearance of somebody who has some money and is sort of a high society person, highly cultured person. And there's pretty quickly we feel some tension between Van and Jade, because Jade starts commenting on Van's appearance and her choice in boyfriend. She actually sort of insults Ern at one point, and so they start arguing. and at one point, Jade asks Van about her value as a person. She's like, "What is your value?" And she's basically telling her that she needs to break it off with Ern. And in that same sequence, she describes herself as providing a service to these NBA players and to these celebrities that she apparently travels around with internationally. So we kind of get the clue that maybe she's some sort of prostitute, but she's bragging about it. She says, "I'm cultured and beautiful," and
I didn't get the impression that she was she would call herself a prostitute, really. More
right,
so
it's
just
kind
like
of pseudo prostitute, maybe. But I mean,
it's on the spectrum of prostitution.
She's on the spectrum. That's a good way to put it. Even though we don't know for sure. I mean, we only have a limited amount of information here, but I mean, they're talking about.
I get the impression that Van says Van kind of fires at her, saying my career or my lifestyle doesn't depend on whether or not some basketball player swipes left on my ass or right. Which, and the fact, so I'm obviously getting the impression that these sports players are these professional athletes are taking her around the world to their different houses, and just so that she will be around them. I didn't get the impression that it was just she's just having sex with them. It just got
I did.
I think I don't know.
Definitely did. and I think we see, well, okay, so like after they kind of stop the sort of verbal back and forth, the food
Mhm.
arrives at the table and they kind of stare at it. There's a pregnant pause, then two well-dressed men show up.
Oh,
And
you missed like the most important part.
what's
So
that?
so
With the
they're like
chopsticks?
no, so they're having this whole argument, or like as this whole first, like the first half of the scene, or I mean like the first 90% of it, I guess, they're like having this conversation and it's kind of escalating, and as it gets like they Van and Jade kind of butt heads more and more. Jade like repetitively tries to kind of like keep the vibe positive, but like the fact that they like live in two completely different worlds just like keeps like
Hmm.
making them disagree with one another, and it finally like builds to a point where like there's just like they're raising their voices at each other, and they just kind of like sit down, and like there's just like a big tension dispersal, and the food comes over, and Jade like takes a picture of her
Oh,
food, and
yeah, that's a
Van
good one.
just like kind of looks at her, and it's like that moment right there was just like such a perfect, like it's like a little funny, it's a nice like relief after like the stressful scene that you had just seen like play out, but then it's also a perfect encapsulation of like everything we learned about these two characters in that past like 2.5 minutes or so of
How
them just
shallow
talking.
Jade is in particular. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I guess you could call shallow. Yeah, I think I mean, I don't like to cast judgment either way, but like it's just Jade is the type who will take the picture of her food, and I mean this is a real thing that people like.
yeah, people
But
do
like
that.
Jade is the type of person who will take a picture of her food to send to other people to project an image of like professionalism and like living the high life to everybody else, which gets her results. This is why, like, because she's the type of person to take a picture of her food is why she's rich and has attention from pro athletes and stuff, and
Yeah,
gets to live the
shallow is
lifestyle
probably
that she
not the right
does.
word.
Um,
So
I
she
mean, I don't think
fits.
shallow is the wrong word, but I don't know. I guess maybe there's like a bit, maybe like superficial. Um,
She's kind of
but then Van is the type.
similar to that the character we saw in the previous episode, who I keep forgetting his
Mhm.
name. That
Zan.
Zan. Yeah, okay.
Hmm.
She's very much
Hmm.
along that line because
Yeah.
she's
But then Van
tuned
is of
into
course the type who,
social media.
yeah. But then like Van is of course the type who does not want to take a picture of her food. She'd rather enjoy the meal and enjoy it with the person she's having a conversation with.
Yes.
And that's just like, it's just like such a, the placement of that little moment in the scene is it's just such a good like encapsulation of everything that we had like just learned about them.
So I also jotted down one other note to comment on. Like it seemed like a throwaway line, but when they first meet, Van, or I should say Jade, comments on Van's hair, or maybe it's the other way around. They're discussing like hair care and Jade's perfume, and this is going to come up at the end as well. This thing about hair, about black women, and how much importance they put on hair. We'll come back to that, but I just wanted to drop it here because
Hmm.
it starts with this, and then it ends with another little seemingly throwaway line. But I have a few things to say about that later.
Hmm.
So then, so the two well-dressed men show up, and I think I said this in the last episode too. It's largely a cast of African Americans in this show. So unless I say otherwise, they're black. So these are two well-dressed black men show up. One appears to be very tall, so maybe it is a basketball player, but Van is sitting, or I should say, I keep mixing up the names. Jade apparently has set up a double date to include Van, and so the one guy, not the tall basketball looking player, but basketball looking guy, but the other guy sits down right next to Van and starts to sweet talk her, telling her how good she looks, and Van is clearly put off by this, and she's just staring at Jade, and then just gets up and leaves. She says she has to go to the bathroom, but she takes her coat with her and she exits. And then, so she's clearly pissed off. and then we cut to the next scene, which is Van walking to her car in the parking garage, and the car pulls up next to her. Jade rolls down the window and starts apologizing to Van, and saying she messed up. She doesn't want her to be upset, and she's trying to convince Van to join her to go out and party with these guys. And at first Van is like, no, I gotta go take care of Lottie. But then you can kind of see Jade starts to get to her, like she starts to sort of entice her to come out. And at one point she actually pulls a joint out and says, "Hey, I got this for you." And
My impression was that she wasn't being very enticing until she offered weed.
Yeah. So then you see Van sort of crack and smile, and she ends up getting in the car with her to go off and get high. So this is kind of like a bad look for Van's character, right? She was understandably pissed off at this woman Jade, because she's basically pimping her, right? And so she has a right to be angry, and she probably has a right to criticize Jade's lifestyle. I mean, whether or not she's really a prostitute, it's not entirely clear, but I mean, you can tell Van is not a big fan of the way this woman leads her life. But she ends up being seduced by Jade, and she gets in the car and she goes off, and the next scene is them smoking weed and getting high in the car. So this is like one of many instances throughout Atlanta where we see Jade making bad decisions, and her character is sort of complicated. And
Jade or Van?
Van. Did I say Jade? Boy, I'm having problems with these names. But anyway, I don't know if you want to comment at this point about just what the creators are doing with Van's character at this point.
For Van, I mean, I guess most of this is just kind of character establishment. I would assume that this is a kind of character that at least some people can relate to. I don't know if any of the creators had like experience with this, like trying to raise a kid while also keep a job that's not paying super well, while also kind of having these like higher aspirations. I mean, we already know that Van has like dreams to make a fashion boutique, I think. Mm-hmm. But that obviously having Lottie and needing to provide for her is like kind of taking up all of her free time. And I mean, that's the same situation that we're in like with this scene here. She initially like leaves and she wants to go back home so that she can take care of Lottie. And when she wakes up the next morning, like Ern is at the house, and he's like kind of covering for Van. I guess like, so, if he weren't there, then Lottie wouldn't really have had anybody taking care of her during that morning. So it's just like, it's not like, in this case, it's not like a life or death scenario, but it definitely, we're getting like an impression.
There overnight?
I don't know.
It wasn't clear to me if he just showed up in the apartment or he was there taking care of Lottie.
I mean, either way, it's also another instance of just showing like how much Ern cares about Lottie. Because like I think it can be easy.
Character.
I think it can be easy to think that Ern, and I kind of alluded to this previously, that like Ern is so dedicated to doing this music management thing that like I think a lot of people, and especially with how like Van kind of criticized him when he was talking about how he thinks that his music management can provide for Lonnie, and Van said that's dumbass shit. I think that at this point it can be kind of easy to maybe call Ern like short-sighted or just like, a little too much of an optimist in how he thinks that this is going to work out. And, regardless of whether or not that's true, I think this scene kind of makes it impossible to say that he doesn't absolutely believe and want this career to like work out for the sake of Lottie.
Yeah, he clearly cares for Lottie.
Yeah, because this doesn't seem like a super special thing for him to do. He just kind of like shows up and and he's being all cute with Lottie, and he's like
Yeah.
offering to
It
help, and he's
seems
saying like,
genuine.
he's like saying like, hey Van, get some more, get like an extra hour of sleep or something. Like I'll take care of Lottie, and he doesn't like take it as a huge deal.
And it's a display of his concern for the mother too. I
Hmm.
mean, like the fact
Yeah.
that he is like taking her off Van's hands. I will say that I actually put a note down here. This is me speaking as a parent myself. That I typically am very critical of how Hollywood portrays mother and father characters in film or in cinema or whatever on television, because it's just unrealistic. The amount of time they give to the actual parenting that is required. The reality, if portrayed accurately
Mm,
on the screen, would require the child to be in the scene for most of the show.
yeah.
Certainly more than 30 seconds out of a 20-minute slice of life episode, which is what we got here. But of course, this would not be interesting for viewers of a TV
Yeah.
show like this. But they're I think that they're
I mean,
trying to
Lottie, the
bring this
thing is,
up.
Lottie isn't, I feel like Lottie isn't like physically present so much, but like her presence is constantly felt, if that makes
Yes,
sense. Like
they constantly comment on the
yeah,
child care
specifically
issues.
Van and Ern are always talking about, yeah, but I have Lottie to take care of, or whenever they're talking to other characters, oh, I need to leave in like by before this time because I need to take care of Lottie, or you know,
Yeah,
if you're
it
getting a
does kind
ride, if
of
I think like,
recede in future episodes. There's a little
yeah,
bit less
yeah.
that, and you're kind of like, well, what happened to the kid?
I mean, maybe Lottie just gets older.
And the grandparents, I think, are involved too. There's
Oh
definitely
yeah.
references to it's
Mm,
Van's parents that are taking care of her a lot, I think.
yeah. Yeah, I vaguely remember a scene like that.
Yeah,
But
I
anyway.
think we'll. Okay, so the next scene, or actually, it is this same scene when Van wakes up. Her phone is buzzing. She's searching for the phone, and when she finally picks it up, she sees on the phone that she has a drug test. There's some sort of notification or
Hmm.
calendar or something that indicates that she has a drug test, and she's like, "Oh shit!" Clearly she forgot about this drug test, and which immediately in my mind was like, oh, this is another sort of strike against her character. Is like, how could she not know
Hmm.
if it's on her calendar that she has a drug test the next day, and yet she decides to go party. But anyway, she ends up calling Alfred for help because she starts to plot how to beat this drug test. She's going to have to give a urine sample, and she calls Alfred, who initially is like ragging on her, because apparently she criticizes him for smoking weed, but now she needs
Yeah, I
Alfred's
was gonna
help.
say there's a line where he says like, "Oh, I thought weed was only for people who aren't going anywhere,"
Yeah,
which I like because that just kind of alludes to an interaction that because I don't think Van and Al had like interacted at all up until this point. So for them to like
yeah.
initially kind of have this like, I mean, not rapport, but like they immediately allude to like an interaction they've had in the past, which makes it feel like they aren't just complete strangers with one another.
That's a good point. I don't recall any other scenes where there was any dialogue between
Yeah.
them up until this point. So
Yeah, and
yeah,
it's just like really quick and like really effective.
yeah. So Alfred agrees to like call and ask his friends about where she might get a fake urine sample, but right as she hangs up the phone, she's got a bag of garbage in her hands, which apparently has like diapers in it, and she like you can see a light bulb go off in her head. Oh, like oh maybe I can get the urine out of Lottie's used diapers, and so we cut to a kitchen scene is where Van's like cutting these diapers apart, trying to extract urine out of diapers either through a strainer, or at one point there's like a pot of something boiling on a stove that she then collects liquid from and pours it into the bowl, and bowl goes in the refrigerator, and then she ends up based on Alfred's advice, she ends up pouring this whatever this was she got out of the bowl into a condom, and then she tapes the condom to the inside of her leg, So she's going to go in with this fake urine sample or Lottie's urine or whatever the extract is, um, and use this to put in the urine collection cup. I gotta say, as a scientist, there's a problem here. This is kind of a tangent, but um, I think if you boil urine, it's gonna screw up the test result. More likely than not, you're gonna have something that doesn't look at all like urine. But anyway, you can have like some sort of gamish of DNA and dead cells. But anyway, it's kind of marginally funny and weird, this scene, like the idea that she's gonna do this. Apparently this is a big thing with athletes and just people in general that want to like fake a urine sample. There's a really funny story. I don't know if you remember this, but there was this athlete. I think he played for the Minnesota Vikings. He had this fake penis that had urine in it or something. They called it the Whizzinator. It's pretty hilarious because he got caught with it, like pulling it out, like because for pro athletes they actually have to have somebody witness you doing it. So he pulled out the Whizzinator, put the urine sample. He ended up getting like suspended or something because he was, I don't know what kind of drugs he had in his system, but anyway, just a side note I thought was pretty funny.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. Any comments before I go to the next scene?
This scene's disgusting.
It is pretty bad.
I don't like it. Let's talk about something else.
I said marginally funny, but like, yeah, weird is probably like. Anyway, okay. So cut to Van walking down the hallway in a school building. So now we kind of get an idea that Van is either a school teacher or works in the school, maybe a school counselor, because somebody else approaches her in the hallway, apparently another teacher.
I think earlier I said she was like a kindergarten teacher, and I just completely forgot, like, this is clearly grade school, not kindergarten.
Yeah, that was my impression.
Whatever.
It was an elementary school building, yeah. And there's this sort of like discussion about some a boy who showed up in this other woman's classroom in whiteface. So this kind of comes out of the blue. I'm not sure.
Yeah, and then it returns again at the end of the episode.
Yeah, it does. But I wrote a couple notes here, like about this being pretty weird. I mean, obviously, if a white kid were to show up in blackface, that would be a big issue, right? That would be deemed inappropriate. Or if an adult were to put on blackface, and a white adult.
I mean, it's way different for adults and kids.
Yeah,
I mean,
and that was actually my note. Is like this is a child, so I mean, what were the creators going for here? It was obviously the child was not like making a political statement, or I don't know how that could be construed to be a political statement if it was a child. So I'm not really sure what they were going for here, other than to just throw out another like weird like racial double standard kind of thing. Are we supposed to, like, in the middle of this this story about Van's drug testing scenario, are we supposed to stop and think about the appropriateness of blackface or whiteface for a black child? I'm not really sure where they were going with this, but apparently the teacher in the hallway thought it was quite inappropriate, and this upset the teacher. And she seemed to think it was more than just like a classroom disruption, because she was asking Van for advice about what to do with this kid.
Yeah, I also have a hard time finding sense in this whole situation. Like my initial reaction would be to kind of link it to something like the Black Justin Bieber thing, where they're just kind of like flipping a racial idea on its head. But I feel like the message to be sent with Black Justin Bieber was a lot more clear. Yes. Or like, I don't know, that was like a real person, so there were like real actions and like events that were referenced and then kind of contrasted. Whereas like with this, it's more so the idea of whiteface. And like the thing is they do whiteface in this show multiple times. Uh and I won't say when.
Oh, I know
Um
what you're talking about. Yeah.
yeah, but I know yeah. So but like I guess they also I guess they like again, this is one of those Atlanta moments where just like it wouldn't exist in any other show. It's not quite this one isn't quite like surreal because like it is also something that like I could imagine a kid maybe actually doing uh if they had just like a really troubled home life maybe or like I don't know. And like the thing is the kid I can't remember what his name was, but the kid like he like looks at the teachers and like raises his eyebrows like seductively. Like
Yeah, it's kind of creepy.
yeah, it's very creepy.
But I agree. I don't know. I don't think there was anything more than just here's another, a specific.
I guess
Uh,
maybe it could be in reference to how like back when blackface kind of was a thing because like this is like a black kid in whiteface who's kind of like putting eyes on black teachers. I guess that could be like a flip-flop of how back in like the early 1900s or whatever they would have films where like uh it was like they were like propaganda films where like white men would like put on blackface and then like approach white women. It would be like, oh no, we got to keep these black men away from our white women. We got to protect their purity or whatever. And like that's what kind of spark. I
it's
mean,
just
it existed beforehand,
hard
but
to
like that was
connect
kind
it
of
to this
part of
scene.
the stereotype of like black men being like aggressive and like wanting to have sex with all the white women. And this I guess could be like a flip of that where it's a black man or a black boy like putting on whiteface and then like put it
It's Yeah,
I
this
don't
is a
know.
big stretch. Yeah, it's how
I don't
I
know.
actually have one
I
more
like
theory at the very end. I'll wait to the very end to
yeah.
throw it out there. But yeah, I struggle with this. I think it's probably more the case that this is just some weird
Yeah.
little snippet that Donald Glover or somebody uh, experienced in their past, where some
That's
uh,
very
one of their
possible.
classmates just happened to put on whiteface, and he just remembers it, and they just stuck it in here just as a little
Yeah,
weird
maybe.
comic relief moment, or maybe not. Well, I don't think it was meant to be comical, but it's
People
weird.
definitely I like found a YouTube clip of like this scene and I mean people in the comments were like this is the funniest shit ever. And I didn't get it. I didn't think it was particularly funny. I was just perplexed by it.
Yeah,
But
I guess. Yeah. I mean, I know I've said this before too, but it would be interesting to hear like the black perspective on that. Like,
Mhm.
what do they think of what? I mean, I mean, in general, you never hear about that, like black people showing up in whiteface. I guess they do. I mean, there
I
must
saw it
be
happen
actors or
on like TikTok or Instagram like one time where a black guy like put on whiteface, but he was being like intentionally provocative or like there was a bunch of people got like mad at him, but I didn't get the impression that there was any like real directed anger. People were just kind of like generally mad, but nobody really said like exactly why it was like
yeah.
what he did that was
Was he
wrong.
trying to
And
do
I'm not
something funny?
I don't know. I based on what I read, I remember thinking that he was trying to. I remember getting the impression that he was trying to make a political statement or like a social statement or something, but I don't know what that statement was.
I think I think maybe they're just messing with us.
But the thing is, like,
The
the
Atlanta
thing is,
creators are
like,
just messing with us.
yeah. I mean, the thing is, this show does also have a bit of a tendency to show young black boys who are kind of like uh I wouldn't call them attention seekers. I would call them like looking for attention because they probably don't get it anywhere else in their lives.
Mhm.
And that manifests in the form of acting out in school.
Yeah, yeah, I could definitely understand that as a storyline, but it just like again, like where does it fit in this
Yeah.
particular episode? I don't know. All right, let's move on because we will have a chance to come back to this at the very end. Um, so Van goes into the bathroom with the condom strapped to her leg. She just passes by somebody in an office who appears to be eating Girl Scout cookies. Just smiles at her. Van picks up the urine collection cup, goes into the bathroom, and now she's she pulls the condom off of her leg, and she's trying to untie the knot that she's created in this condom, which she apparently cannot do. And so she ends up biting at it. And then, of course, the condom bursts, and another gross out, cringe-worthy scene, which kind of made me laugh, but pretty disgusting to think about. Whatever that was in the condom that splashed all over her. And so that was a epic fail for her. And then immediately the next scene, we see her walking into the principal's office, or somebody who either is an administrator or a superintendent, somebody of authority that has called her into the office and questions why she had not produced a urine sample. And she just immediately admits, I smoked weed. And the principal, we'll just call her the principal, also a black woman, says that, well, the urine samples are not actually tested anyway, but we just have employees do that to keep them on their toes. And the principal seems to be expressing sympathy, like, I know everybody smokes weed.
I got the impression, based on her performance, that she was genuinely sympathetic, but that this is a routine she's gone through multiple times.
Yeah, I think that's
that. Like she's kind of had that. Like she's caught other teachers smoking or whatever, and she's kind of like, yeah, I get it. We all have to blow off steam somehow. However,
yeah, she also throws a line in here too, which, I mean, you tell me if this is significant in any way. She says, everybody smokes weed. The system isn't made for kids to succeed, and you got to shake it off.
You got to
somehow.
talk about it.
And so we see Van sort of, her shoulders drop. She sighs in relief. But then she gets fired anyway because of the fact that she admitted to using an illegal substance.
Yeah.
And then we see a look of confusion on her face. So the principal...
So this whole...
Yeah, go ahead.
This whole interaction is kind of a amalgamation of what I've talked about in past episodes, where I think I mentioned how when you're like living in these like really poor socioeconomic conditions, you kind of have to do whatever you can to get by. And I think this scene is highlighted. She says, you just admitted that you smoked weed, that you smoked an illegal substance to a higher up. So to protect my own ass and the school's ass, I have to like fire you. So this woman is explicitly saying, I'm going to have to like kick you down the ladder so that I can stay in my position, right?
Kick you off the ladder. I mean, they fired
Yeah, sure. Yeah. But like that's an example of realistically speaking, this is also kind of what I was talking about. Yeah, it was with the woman who would not give Ern the kids meal in episode 3. But yeah, this is another example of like they kind of have of like this is a black individual who kind of has a foothold and seems to be doing all right for themselves, but they appear to be kind of plagued with this anxiety that their success could be taken away from them at any moment, and so they have to remain very vigilant. And if that means what?
The principal is protecting her own ass.
Yeah. And if anything happens that kind of puts their own job in jeopardy, then they're gonna take whatever measures are necessary to like secure their own safety, even if that means putting other people at risk or just straight up kicking them off the ladder.
Yeah, this is kind of I get that.
And I mean, I don't feel like you can really blame them for it. That's the conditions that they're living in. It's just really.
I guess I understand that analysis, but I mean, the principal totally, that she seemed to be sympathetic and acknowledged that, quote, everybody smokes weed, and that the drug test was not even carried out, or that all she would have had to do was put a sample in a cup and then it would be over with. Where's the liability on the principal's part if she overlooks this?
So remember how when I was talking about the manager at that McDonald's, that there was like virtually no reason why she couldn't sell earn a kid's meal. Like, it would have been another sale for the company, and
Mhm.
literally, who cares? There's no downside. But it's just like policy, arbitrarily, seemingly, that like makes it so that she technically couldn't sell him a kid's meal, right? I think we're looking at the
Mhm.
same kind of situation.
I see.
It's like whoever's above this principal woman is saying, "Hey, if anybody smokes weed and you find out about it, you have to report it. You have to fire that person."
Yeah.
Even though, and especially now, like that 6 years after, 6 years later from season 1, like I think I believe weed was not entirely illegal, but only allowed in, like, I remember looking up like a little chart or a little visual diagram of like the legalization of weed, because I was interested in how that related to this show, because this show
Yeah, it
started in
goes from state to
2016.
state.
Um, but I think in Georgia, weed at by the time of 2016 was allowed only for like medical
Uh,
prescription services, I think. So it was not like recreationally legal, I
yeah,
think. Again,
I think
I might be
you're
wrong about
probably
that,
right.
but yeah. So like I think this could have been kind of a comment on a like at what was at the time like a real sort of debate, or like a something that people were kind of fighting for, which was like the legalization of recreational marijuana.
Well,
Um,
I would guess that it's more specifically, it questions the policies for teachers, drug testing teachers, or
mhm.
if you want to generalize it to like any employee, you know,
Yeah.
is it appropriate to do drug testing on teachers? And I actually looked up some information.
Hmm.
Didn't spend a whole lot of time doing this, but this is also something that goes from state to state. In some states, they do random drug testing of teachers. It's
Yeah.
actually unusual. Most states they don't do it at all. I mean, the teachers unions kind of get involved here and like
Yeah, I mean,
try to protect it.
I would say like it's kind of absurd to like randomly drug test it. Well, I mean, for if you're looking for harder substances,
Yeah.
but for stuff like marijuana, I think is kind of ridiculous. Like, we wouldn't get mad if we found out that a teacher had been drinking like the night before
Oh, I don't
they.
know. Oh, the night before.
I mean, in this case, it was the night before. I
Yeah.
think. I mean, maybe not like if you have like a really bad hangover, then yeah, that's gonna that's gonna impair your ability to
Hey,
teach. But like
uh,
over the weekend, if we find out
I'll
that if
take the opposite side of the argument. I
yeah,
generally agree with you what you're saying, but there's definitely I had a teacher when I was in high school who was an alcoholic, and
mm,
she hid booze in the school. Like,
yeah,
and she was drinking during the day, and
oh yeah, I don't
there
think
was no
that's
drug testing of
appropriate.
her or alcohol testing, whatever.
Yeah,
Um, but but yeah, I mean, getting back to this, the
well, the way that
specific
like
point, like
yeah,
is like that. I actually looked up like the state of Georgia had the only drug testing requirement involved their insurance policies. Like if a public school teacher wants it's some sort of discount on their insurance premiums, then they had to take a drug test to get this
mm,
discount. So I don't think in reality in the state of Georgia, unless something has changed in the last 6 years, I don't think this was actually real school policy in the state of Georgia.
yeah, I mean,
But
I couldn't
it
say.
represents a larger issue, I think, about maybe they're trying to point to the specific impact it has on black uh, women or blacks in general. Um,
Yeah,
does the drug policy, affect them in a negative way more so than everybody else?
I generally get the impression that like it's kind of a like, or at least that that Atlanta is kind of hinting at a disproportionate effect of like drug laws and drug policing on poor communities, which overlaps a lot with African American communities.
But I mean, I would, as a parent, again, seeing my kids go through school, I would certainly be, I would think hard about, whether or not I'm okay with a pot smoking teacher, teaching my kids, you know, it doesn't
Mhm.
it doesn't make you confident about that person's abilities. If
I mean, so. I mean, I don't know. I'm just like kind of curious. So then, like, a teacher who like drinks on the weekends.
alcohol, I would have a similar thought if they're like a binge drinker.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. No, I'm
so
not
so
saying.
there's a
I'm
lot
not
of gray
advocating that
areas,
like
gray
teachers.
levels here.
I'm not advocating that like teachers should be allowed to go to school high, but I'm generally of the
Right.
opinion that like anybody can. Obviously, there's a line, but like
Yeah.
I think that just that most professions, and I would include teachers, like can healthily indulge in legal
Well,
recreational
and that's
marijuana
where it
use.
crosses over into like what's legal and what's not. And I
Hmm.
think we're to assume, well, it was clear from this episode that
Based on
what
this
Van
episode, I
did
got the
was
impression
illegal.
that, and also knowing the law of the state at the time, I got the impression that like what the school was trying to tell, in this case, the school doesn't seem to even have the budget to like carry out drug tests to like actually have them done. But it made it out that like the teachers, and especially also based on like Van's comments to Al, where she was like, "Oh, smoking weed is for people who aren't going anywhere," and Van has the most like traditional job, like I guess stable. I mean, according to Darius, drug selling is actually a pretty stable and lucrative job, but she's got the most like real job, quote unquote, out of anybody in the main cast, and based on like just kind of her mannerisms and the way that she talks about what Al and Ern get up to and stuff, and the anxiety that she has over this drug test, like to me makes it seem like if like the school was trying to tell her like if we find any drugs or marijuana in this case in your system, like you're just fired immediately, which is what ended up happening, not because of the actual marijuana in her system, but because she admitted it.
Yeah.
um
I think
but
that
I yeah.
the admission, well, like I would draw a distinction between like alcohol use and in this case an illegal substance. You know, it might not be illegal today, and you can probably make an argument that somebody who smokes a joint the day before they go to class, they're probably fine to go in there and teach, but it is illegal. And as a public, teacher, public employee, you're expected to follow the laws, right? And she obviously broke the law by smoking weed. So
All right,
I
so
can,
it's like
that would
it's
be
that
the
kind
argument
of.
that it's a legitimate reason to punish her. Like the other thing I wrote down here was, in reality, I don't think teachers get fired on the spot for this kind of thing. I think there's
Probably no,
punishment
no, no,
for
probably not.
first offense kind of thing.
No, yeah, I think I think the reason that Van got fired in this case was, as far as like what it does for the show, is that it shows that the principal is not willing to cut her any slack, because any slack that she cuts Van could be like detrimental, like even if it's a very small percentage of a chance that it could go badly for her, the principal. She's not going to take that risk, because
I think
because they all
the
have something to
creators
lose.
the creators are just taking sort of artistic license here and pointing to like this negative event in Van's life. When in reality, if a public school teacher was, you know, in front of a administrator like that with, admission that they smoked weed, I don't think the punishment would be
Well, yeah,
firing.
I'm just saying that like I don't think it's just for like the sake of TV drama. I think they also have a theme to go along with this creative choice.
What is the theme?
That like what I was saying with the McDonald's manager, like
Oh yeah, yeah. Well,
that
then
like
it,
people
it
who
is.
have kind
They
of their
are
foot in the
just doing it
door.
for effect. Then to build on, they're
Well,
they're they're presenting an unjust firing, which really, in reality, probably would not happen that way. They're presenting it to build on this other theme that you just described.
yeah,
So that's fine. Um, so anyways, there's also a little exchange that the principal has with Van, like right before they leave. The principal actually gets up and after she seemingly has sympathy for her, but fires her, she gets up and hugs her, and then kind of like just tells her that she'll be all right, which which is kind of like a contradictory expression. Like, that to me just like seemed either like a like just inappropriate comment or some flaw in the principal's character, because she just fired her. Just, she probably knows that this woman is a single parent or has a child, and uh, she just fired her and then tells her, "Oh, you'll be all right." And then she makes a comment about her hair being loud or something, uh, which brings me back to the comment I made at the beginning about like this.
Well, she was saying that she could smell the weed on her.
Oh, really? I thought she was just commenting on her hairstyle.
She said, "Oh baby, you're loud." And then she was like, "It's all in your hair." Like the
She
weed
smells the
smell.
weed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I could see that. But it was another reference
Like
about.
I can tell you are smoking weed loud and clear.
Hmm, okay. Well, all right, then I don't think then it was the same sort of reference, but again, it is like another callback to like this fixation about hairstyles. And I mean, we could talk about this as a social issue too, like
I mean,
African Americans
I think that's a real
fixation
thing.
on hair.
I don't know if this episode was really going for that specific angle.
Nah, I think you're right. I think it was another just thing that they tossed in there that are just little cultural snippets that maybe are somewhat specific to the African American experience. Because I've heard off and on like stories about how much time African Americans women spend on their hair and how important it is
Hmm.
to them. Uh, but I mean, Van has sort of a natural look most of the time. Like, um,
I mean,
but the principals,
we see her hair in a handful of different styles depending on what she's going for. Like when she
yeah,
goes out to party, she puts her hair up in a certain way, and then I mean, in this episode alone, when she was at dinner, she had her hair up. And I mean, her friend comments on it. Yeah, that's what you were talking about. And
and
then
but her friend and the principal character too, I think both
yep,
had straight hair. and,
yeah.
and that was the specific thing that comes up. Like if you search this subject, for information about the culture, like how the idea that black women straighten their hair for reasons that may or may not have to do with them wanting to fit in, or maybe them
Yeah, I've
feeling
heard
like discriminated against if they have
I've
curly
heard
hair.
stories, or maybe not so stories, but like sort of analysis of the culture from a black perspective, that like there's kind of a they from what I gather, like there are plenty of black women who straighten their hair purely because that's just the way they like their hair. Maybe like they just like that texture better, or they think it just looks better on them, and like that's totally they should be allowed to do that. Um, but this creator I can't remember the name of also kind of mentioned that like they get the impression that it's kind of a survival tactic, or a way
Mm,
to improve your odds, just kind of in the same way that like some actors have like changed their names, or like their first or
yeah,
last names from something that sounds more like Hispanic or African American or something to like a whiter sounding name. That way they're more likely to be able to like make it in the acting industry. I think that like there's kind of that same flavor going on with like the idea of African American women straightening their hair. But
yeah.
that's just kind of
I
commentary I've
I
heard.
misinterpreted that comment from the principal, because I just
Yeah.
I was sensitive to the very first scene, because the Jade
Mm.
character, who was so well made up, had perfectly long straight hair, and
I
and
would say
that's obviously
that's
not natural.
Yeah. No, I would say that was more of a like maybe using the I won't say fixation, but maybe the more care and attention that's given to hair in African American individuals on average, as like a conduit for explaining or showing the difference in wealth between Jade and Van.
Hmm.
Whereas Jade is dressed up in much more expensive clothes and will straighten her hair as a means of like it seems that this would, in this case, like if we're analyzing kind of her fashion choice, that this, and based on what the show in this episode is about, that like that's kind of her way of, like you were saying, fitting in more to the culture that she's living in, like in her socioeconomic position. And um and with Van, her hair is kept curly and kind of frizzy and like in a bunch of different styles. That's not just down and maybe in a ponytail and straight and stuff. I think that was like, yeah, kind of a way to separate those two and like make it immediately clear like their difference in lifestyle. Because I mean, Jade says like, "Oh, hey, where'd you get your hair done?" And she's like, "Oh, you must have gone to," I can't remember the name of the salon she was talking about. She was like, "Oh, you must have gone to whoever's." And Van's like, "How much do they pay?" And Jade is like, "Oh, they're not cheap." And
Yeah.
Van's like, "Well, there you go. I am poor and you are rich."
Yeah, and there's definitely a lot of stuff posted online about the amount of money that's like spent. I mean,
Mhm.
I can only imagine like how long would it take for like Jade to make her hair look like that? If and how long does it stay like that? Like if you just take a flat iron to your hair, that I mean, to have that long of a hair, and let's assume that that's really her hair and it's not some sort of wig or something. But
I think that's her hair.
like, how much time would you think it would take to do that? It seems like an absurd
I don't
waste
know.
of time to me. But the where this crossed over like into the school policy issue, and and I don't think this was part of what the creators of Atlanta were going for here, but I just happened to uh, in the process of researching um, drug testing policy in schools and African women hair care. Like I found one article that actually crossed over into um, the discussion of school uniforms and whether schools that require students to wear uniforms uh, include hairstyles under
Uh,
the guise of uniforms. And there was
yeah.
like this one anecdote of a student who had to leave the school because they came to class with dreadlocks
Mm,
or something. It
yeah.
was an African American that was asked to leave because they didn't fit the description of the school uniform, which in this case included hairstyles, which that I found that kind of
That's
interesting. I
yeah.
mean, sounds like your immediate response is, "Oh, that's inappropriate," right?
I
Like,
think
don't
yeah.
tell the kid what to wear on their hair. But that's not too different than the argument of why should they tell the kid what to wear as a uniform on their body? It's kind of the same
I
argument.
mean, hair is part of your body. Clothes are what you put on it.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's
Like if
probably
you
where I
cut off,
come
like if
down
you
on it
cut
too.
off hair, if you cut off hair, you can't, or you have to wait a long time to grow that back. But like if you ask somebody, like you can put on a uniform and then just take it off at the end of the day.
Yeah,
And personally, I would lean more so against like schools needing uniforms. Although I've heard there's like benefits to both, and frankly, I don't think it's that big a deal. uh, School
well, I
uniforms,
mean, do you
so
think
long
this
as it
is a
doesn't cross over to like hairstyle. I would say. I
I've
think
actually
I think the
um,
line exists
I've
beyond
heard
or between
some
those two.
discussion about inner city schools that uh, like try to enforce more discipline because obviously there's a big problem in the inner city public schools. Like the dropout rate is like just absurdly high, and school discipline is a problem. And let's just say for the sake of the argument that this is a more specific um, um, thing that could help maintain discipline in African American classrooms, like the enforcement of a school uniform, because we're gonna see in another future episode uh, the question about like uh, what kids wear to school, like how important that is to them. There's this one episode that I won't spoil it, but it involves a designer shirt that becomes a topic of great conversation. And I think that's kind of a real thing, right? Like there's this like attempt to distinguish yourself or to do something unique with your clothing, to show off, your expensive sneakers or shoes or shirt or whatever it is. I mean, and you could see the same thing apply to, hair, how much time and money you spend on your hair, and not wanting like young elementary school age kids to become fixated on something that cost a tremendous amount of money to maintain or to just for the sake of image.
I mean, the flip side of that is that, the way you present to the outside world is like a really big part of forming identity. And, like, I'm generally of the impression that, like, grade school kids will find ways to make fun of each other no matter what. I don't think that means that we shouldn't do I don't think that means we shouldn't, like, do anything to try and prevent social misconduct, I guess we'll call it. But I mean, yeah, there's kind of that's kind of what I was talking about when I said that there are like pros and cons, where like the benefits of having a uniform is that all of the students are kind of put on an even playing field in terms of how they present to the outside world. And, for kids that young, they're very concerned about how they look to other people.
They probably hate it, but it brings them together, like in their
but then like
their opposition to the people enforcing.
But I mean, then of course, the flip side of that, what's like one of the cons is that it limits the kids' what would you call it, like ability to express themselves. Yeah, which I think is that's also definitely a valuable and useful thing to have and important for a kid's development. So
as long as that expression doesn't have too many negative effects on.
Yeah, I mean, what negative effects do dreadlocks have?
Yeah, that would be the argument.
Like,
I don't think. I don't see too much of a harm to other people.
Yeah, I mean, at my school,
only to whoever's paying to maintain that hairstyle.
Yeah, I mean, at my school, it was just like no profanity, no like, what did they call it? No like advertisement or promotion of like drug use or violence or anything like that. Which is like, yeah, sure, I think that's pretty reasonable. But other than that, we were allowed to wear whatever we wanted.
Yeah.
I'll also say that
I'm getting off topic here as far as.
Well, I'll also say that like because I think this is most of this is used as a means of putting a gap between Van and Jade, and I guess the people like Van and the people like Jade, and I would say that like, what was I gonna say?
I mean, that was
so with there's a line that Jade says to Van when they're on the phone, and it's that Jade has never had a job that doesn't encourage smoking, whereas Van has a job that will get her fired for smoking, and that's just kind of, I think, like yet another like it's just like a really simple but illustrative difference of like the kinds of lifestyles that they live.
Yeah, I like the fact that the creators of Atlanta, like they really do draw distinctions in terms of wealth. And I think they do this on purpose, but like they have a lot of racialized issues that the characters are confronted with, but more often than not, like you end up seeing that the wealth issue is the overriding thing that causes separation between the characters, and that like. Yeah,
I mean, in this case, it's like well, I mean, the other thing, kind of like what we were talking about is that like the wealthy characters like lean like would I guess you could say they like lean more on the white culture of things, and then like the poorer characters are like more like stereotypically black culture, I guess. But like what I was going with this is that Jade and Van, they're obviously like Van is very poor and Jade is very rich, and like again, like at this time in Georgia, like marijuana was not allowed for recreational use. And I mean, I guess Jade is traveling all over the place, so maybe she is going to like California where it was legal at this time. But like, just like the fact that Jade doesn't like get punished like at all, she even gets rewarded for her recreational use of marijuana, whereas Van does, kind of like I think highlights the differences in like the systems that they both find themselves in.
Oh, you think that's a like a
Yeah, the like
discriminatory
well,
effect?
yeah, like against the poor, I guess.
Oh, against the poor?
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I guess you're led to believe that amongst these characters in Atlanta, it's kind of embedded in the culture, like the use of marijuana.
Yeah.
And and I don't. I mean, but I mean the the legality of it. I guess I'm trying to think of an episode where they actually address like criminal justice issues. I mean that's where my mind goes when it
Well, I
comes
mean,
to
episode 2.
disproportionate effect of illegalized drug use. Episode two.
Yeah, when they're in the being
Oh, that
held.
the shooting, the fallout from the shooting. Yeah, one of them
Yeah,
ends up.
Ern got arrested for possession of marijuana,
Yeah, but nothing
whereas
ever
Al
came of
got like
that. I mean,
misorderly
he was
conduct.
basically released. It was
Yeah,
just yeah,
it was his first offense though.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, I mean, I guess the thing that's uncomfortable in my mind about the the argument that you know that this is like something specific to black culture, the use of marijuana, or it's not, maybe not specific to, but it's part of their culture. It seems like not something I would want to like admit to, you know, like use of recreational drugs is kind of an escapist, uh, any
I don't
drugs
know.
really, and it just
Well, I mean,
I
like,
don't know.
so
It
like
doesn't
same
seem
with
like
alcohol.
something to glamorize. Alcohol, I feel the same way about alcohol.
Yeah.
I mean, it's legal.
I don't know if I'd call like
we tried to make it illegal as a country, and that was a terrible disaster. That was a ended up being a bad idea because there became a huge black market for it. And the same
mm,
thing is true for marijuana. There's been a black
yeah.
market for marijuana forever, and now it's becoming illegal in many states. And we'll see what happens
Mm,
if if the public health uh, issues get more significant. Uh,
I get the
I think
impression that
the decriminalization of it is a good thing. The
yeah,
question is whether
definitely.
long term it causes like more public health issues. And
I mean,
like
I
teachers
would
showing
say
up to school high. It's legal now, so why shouldn't a
yeah,
teacher be able
I
to
don't know if
smoke
a
weed
teacher
before
showing
they?
up to school high is legal.
Well, I mean,
But
if is it like that's a good
I don't
question,
know.
right? If you're in a state where it's legal to use recreational weed, is it acceptable? It's certainly I would say it's not acceptable, but is it
I
illegal?
doubt. I mean, it sounds like the kind of thing where like it would be like, oh, if the teacher shows up to school high, then the principal is going to be like, hey, the contract says like no misorderly conduct, and this does fall within that umbrella,
How do they
even
know
if,
they're high? They have to drug test them.
well, yeah.
But you were just saying that was unjust.
No. So the drug testing, like in this case, this was like a drug test for them having, like I said, this was a drug test that was the school telling the teachers like, hey, if we catch you any marijuana in your system, which like if you've smoked, like drug tests will catch marijuana that has been in your system for the past like few days, I think.
Months.
Months.
Yeah, it sticks
Jeez.
around in your.
Okay, yeah. So then
Depends
like
on what test you take.
yeah,
But
exactly. So then like you can't so in that case that's not impairing their ability to teach. Having smoked, like, coming to school high is different than, like, being a teacher who smokes doesn't mean that you're coming to school high. It just means that you're a teacher who also smokes, and like,
So you would draw the line between somebody who was smoking it the day before versus somebody who smoked it the morning before.
I mean, I would draw the line. I would say that, like, it just depends on, like, the behavior of the teacher in the classroom. Like, I mean, I guess if a teacher, like, who just, like, smoked a ton, like, right before they went into class and then somehow managed to teach the class just as well as if they could sober, then, like, I would say, yeah, that should be allowed. But my impression of what the substance does to you tells me that, like, that's not really what's going on, and that, shouldn't be allowed. But not on the basis of, not because they smoked, but because they're not doing their job as well as they would, right?
Well, I think
So,
the
like,
potential for like the public health issue to sort of like make things worse, specifically like in this scenario. I mean, and this would apply to white people as well as black
yeah,
people,
yeah.
is like if you legalize an intoxicating substance like this, and and by the way, it's not just smoking. You can take this in pill form or gummies or
Yeah, yeah.
edibles, uh, and it's not illegal to use it recreationally. Then you
Hmm.
have to start thinking about um, how do you monitor like the performance, or you got to change your policies about when somebody is impaired and when
Yeah,
somebody's
yeah.
not
No, I
impaired.
think the policy should be like, I think the pol- like, I think the policy should be like, if they can still do their job, well, like, to a whatever standard the school wants to hold them to, then yeah, like, they
There it
shouldn't be
is.
punished. But if
Yeah,
they
and
if they
that's
can't,
the
and
problem.
the reason that they can't could be because they're, they ate gummies like a couple hours before they came to class, but it could also be because they didn't get enough sleep, like they just pulled consecutive all-nighters, you
But are
know.
we lowering the standard to accommodate the
I
use
would
of
say,
drugs
I
in
mean,
one
I
culture or
don't know
another?
what is literally written in the law, so I can't say, like that as a country I think that we're good or bad, but like my ideal would be that, like, and what I'm hoping is happening, and like what's kind of in the process of happening with marijuana being legalized kind of all around the country, is just that, like, the use of recreational marijuana would be, like, legal, but the standard of teaching would still be kept held high. And
Yeah,
and
that's
so
kind
it
of
would
how I
just be,
feel.
it would just be the schools telling the teachers, like, hey, smoke as much weed as you want, just so long as you're still a good teacher, and if the teachers end up smoking a ton in it and it ends up impairing their ability to teach, whether that's because, like, they, I don't know, are
Well,
smoking, like, right
you're
before they're coming to class, then
posing
yeah,
it
they should be punished for that, I think. But
you're posing it as if there's a question as to whether or not it would impair their ability to teach. I would take the position that yeah, it does. I mean, anybody who wants to make an argument that somebody's like ability to communicate and teach is better when they're high, that's
Well, no,
I would
yeah,
have
yeah,
a
but
hard
again,
time
like, I'm not
accepting
saying, like, when they're
or
high,
even the
like, I'm
same.
I'm kind of assuming that, like, we're dealing with, a teacher who maybe smokes every other weekend or something, or, like, takes a gummy every so often, not right before they're about to go to school, but yeah, like, on a
Yeah.
weekend or on a break or something like that. And then, they have a day to recover or whatever, and then they go back to class the next day. And, like, I feel like they should be
Yeah, that's kind
fine.
of the
I
way
don't
it
think
is.
I
The
don't
expectation is that
Yeah, yeah,
that
like,
they
I don't
show
get
up
the
sober.
yeah. Yeah, just so long as you, like, show up able to do your job, whether that's,
But we know that, I mean, this is what economists call a moral hazard, right? You lower the punishment, or you eliminate the
well, I don't
punishment,
think, well, again, I mean, again, like,
and
I think that the elimination for the punishment is of, like, a bad like, as it's presented in Atlanta, like, the thing they're being punished for is having done weed at all, right? But what I think they should be punished for is, like, not doing their job well, right? Which could
yeah,
come as, which,
agreed.
like, that could happen as the result of smoking too much weed or smoking it right before class. But not necessarily. It's like attacking the symptom of the problem and not the problem itself, right?
Mhm. Okay, well, we got to comment on the final scene before
Mm-hmm.
we get too long here. The final scene, like we see a dejected Van sitting at her teacher's desk in the front of the classroom, and she's been fired, but she still has to report to class. She has to finish out her last couple days at the school. And
Mm-hmm.
the very last shot is the little black boy in white face, like just smiling, and he just kind of makes eye contact with Van, and he like raises one eyebrow, which is got very
Yeah.
creepy looking smile on his face. So here we are at the end, and I thought it was a really cool shot, like camera wise, but I really don't know what that white face is supposed to implicate, what's supposed to mean, if there's some sort of racial
I don't have anything else to add.
interpretation. I don't know what it is.
I already said everything I could possibly say about this.
I really like the look on the kid's face though, because it was so creepy. So yeah, I actually I'll just finish by saying I've been trying to like take in some other Donald Glover content videos, and I actually saw a video on YouTube where they had the whole, not the whole cast, but most of the cast up there on stage with an interview.
Mm.
And after watching that, and maybe we can do this for our Patreon subscribers or something to specifically talk about that interview. Um, there was it seemed more clear to me that Donald Glover was just presenting stories, short stories from his past, in the form of these episodes of Atlanta, and it kind of made me think that we're overthinking some of these scenes, and that maybe that kid in whiteface was just a random memory from his elementary school days where he happened to see a kid
I
in
may have seen
whiteface.
the same interview you're talking about, and what I got out of that was was that they didn't really have a particular message in mind while making a lot of what's present in
Right.
Atlanta, especially these kind of one-off episodes. But I didn't get the impression that I don't think they said that, like, or Donald's, I guess, said that like these were all things that happened to him in his past. I think they were just kind of like ideas that he and the team were like just kind of spitballing around, like in group texts and
Yeah.
in the writers' room and stuff like that. And although in most of it is kind of like a mental exercise in coming up with sort of surrealist ideas, or just like, hey, what if this happened? And they would just, and that, like, just like on its face, it would be like an interesting idea. I don't think that necessarily means that like we're overthinking it, because like there is a lot to think about. Like it just the fact that like I think these scenes kind of like call to our minds, ideas that we can
Yeah,
apply
for
to
sure.
real life is
But I
like
think it can be
valuable in and of
both.
itself.
I think they're purposely messing with us at times, like a
Yeah.
lot of stuff that Darius says, right? I mean, it's just like some really absurd stuff, which is partly for comedic effect and comedic
That stuff I
relief.
definitely see as like almost always having at least the purpose of well, I mean, being entertaining, because it's just like
Yeah,
fun stuff, but just being stuff that Darius would say.
yeah. But again, like there's definitely some food for thought here in terms
Mm,
of social, statement about the marijuana testing
mhm.
policies in the public school system. But like whether or not there's some sort of like cherry on top with this whiteface scene, I just like I don't get it. Maybe our listeners can weigh in. If
Yeah,
maybe
I don't
I
know.
know I was trying to think of a way that they were saying that that Van's firing somehow had to do with white administration, but
I
I mean
don't
there
know.
was the principal figure
I mean,
was a
possibly.
black woman, so it wasn't obvious if there was something distinctly discriminatory about what happened to Van there. and whether that white-faced boy was supposed to represent that, that was even less clear.
Yeah. All right. Well, one last tidbit before we close up that I forgot to mention when it came up, but Jade is like always trying to keep the conversation with Van positive and stuff, and we know that they've known each other for a long time, and I just got the impression that maybe Jade does that because Van is like the only non superficial like human connection she has in her life, like outside of family maybe.
Wait, say that again. She's the only
Non-superficial like human connection. Like
Okay.
Jade and Van clearly know stuff about each other. They've known each other for a long time, so they can have
Uh-huh.
like these like deeper conversations. But I get the impression that like Jade isn't talking like that. Like they like smoke together in the car and they just like kind of decompress, right? I get
Yeah.
the impression that like I mean, I'm sure Jade smokes with other people, but I get the impression that like Jade is not really being completely honest, or she's like putting up a bit of a character to like these rich
Yeah.
athletes,
Yeah.
I guess, and that could possibly and like despite the fact that like Jade and Van clearly have a lot of differences now and have in a sense kind of grown apart, they
Hmm.
still like or at least Jade still seems to be like putting in a lot of genuine effort to like keep their friendship together, and I just suspect that that's because like Jade maybe isn't getting a lot of like genuine connective friendships in the rest of her life, which
Yeah.
could be a
There's
bit of
there's a
food for
couple
thought on
other
that style on that lifestyle.
yeah, I think we'll see some more episodes that get into Van's like emotional state and her personality, and there's some other characters that sort of come in with a similar sort of interplay that we see with Jade. Like there's kind of like and there I remember you kind of thing, but you've changed, and who are you? Who am I? Those kinds of things come out in Jade's character, or I'm sorry, Van's character. I did it again. In Van's character, there's kind of an identity crisis that starts to emerge. But I don't want to give that away.
Yeah, we'll get
More
into it
episodes coming up.
in later episodes. But yeah, thank you guys for listening to this episode. Once again, patreon.com/AtlantaCast. You can go there to support the show. I'm sure you all remember the tiers by now, but if you're not so inclined on paying money, of course, subscribing is free, sharing the video is free. You can go ahead and give the video a like. That's just a little algorithm boost. Highly, highly appreciated. A lot of people think it just kind of doesn't really do anything. It's just a way to let us know that you enjoyed it. But no, it does also kind of factor into how YouTube decides what content to show to new people. So yeah, we'd greatly appreciate it. And thanks as always for watching. We'll see you in the next one.
Thanks, everyone.